Hey folks, before we start the show, a reminder that we're in our fund drive for root words. If you like the show, and we hope you do, please consider following the link in the description to our donation page, or by visiting vermontfarmersfoodcenter.org. Any donations received by the end of July will be matched by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Your support helps us share these stories with the community. Now on to the show. Welcome to Root Words, a podcast that explores agriculture and cooking's role in connecting us to our landscape and our communities. I'm Stephen Abatiell. Root Words is a collaboration between Vermont Farmers Food Center, Shrewsbury Agricultural Education and Arts Foundation, Shrewsbury Historical Society, WEXP, and many other community members. The project began in 2017 and was made possible by support from the National Endowment for the Humanities, as well as from this community. Throughout this podcast, you're going to be hearing stories from people around the Rutland County region in the heart of Vermont, a region rich in agriculture, family farms, a region that's a pastoral working landscape. These stories are going to be each little windows into what a regional food system really looks like on the community level. We're excited to introduce you to some passionate folks working with the land and with food and bringing communities together. So please pull up a chair and enjoy. In part one of our Growing Farmers series, we heard from Scott Courcelle about his farm mentor, Greg Cox, and from Greg Cox about his farm mentor, Bill Clark.
He wasn't a produce person for the longest time, but then as farmers markets really reared up, he could see that as the next path. And he started gleaning in Rutland County. He started raffle. He started the Vermont Farmers Market. Instrumental in the Rutland County Farmers Market. You can just go on and on and on, and most people have no clue how any of this starts. It's always, but going back upstream, Bill Clark is definitely in the water. I don't think there is a more important individual in the history of agriculture in the state of Vermont.
In this episode, we'll hear from Scott Courcelle of Alchemy Gardens about what mentorship from Greg Cox meant to him and how he's paying that forward with an apprenticeship program. And we'll hear from one of his apprentices, Katie Stickney. We'll round the episode out with a few highlights from some innovative programs from Vermont's Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, Vermont's BIPOC farming community. All right, so on this episode of Root Words, we're talking again with Scott Courcelle of Alchemy Gardens. How you doing, Scott?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Describe a little bit of the farm incubation with Greg. What did he provide for you? What was that? What did that look like for the starting of Alchemy Gardens?
Yeah. So we had basically just one season under our belt of working, 6 months on a vegetable farm that was going to the market, and we learned a lot at Foggy Meadow for sure. Like, we really learned a lot, and that was why we were there. We were taking it seriously. And when we left there, the obstacles to starting a farm were like all capital considerations. Everything to do with getting the farm started was way more money than we could devote to the project. We basically had nothing to put towards it. And so, what Greg gave us, he offered us a piece of his land to grow on free of any charge. He provided the equipment, tractors and implements for us to use in order to run our farm operation. We used his walk-in cooler, his wash station. He gave us a propagation house, like a greenhouse frame that we built in Shrewsbury as a propagation house. And then everything else was basically provided by Greg. So we had no real financial risk into the thing at all. And, that's the other piece of, that's like the follow through. That's the follow up on his his saying, you could fail at the next 10 things you do and be all the better for it. Well, that's particularly true if you're not putting up, going into debt to enter, an unproven market as a new farmer. Like that's insurmountable for a lot of people. But to be able to do it with really no financial risk at all was actually the opportunity that allowed us to get our business up and going.
So what do you feel is yours and Alchemy's? What do you feel is your role in teaching and support of gardeners or another generation of growers?
Just trying to pay that forward to folks who are new to it and passionate about it and excited about it. And it's pretty cool to at times recognize, see ourselves as folks that now have enough experience to inspire and help to guide new and beginning folks and gardeners alike and all of that. I don't get too hung up on making a distinction of whether I'm helping farmers or gardeners or why it makes much difference or whatever, but just helping people to grow stuff and provide for themselves and our community and all that is super exciting. I see myself as more of a gardener's educator. I want to educate people to do it at home because that's actually what my passion is. I still want to provide food in our community and I still want to be a farmer. And, we're in the process of purchasing this place and I can definitely will strive to farm on here in creative ways, but we're really taking a big step away from being one of the produce farms in Rutland County that's taking it on. So it feels like a big question to when you say what do you think your role is? It's just, and I always have this piece of Greg is amazing because I've at times when I've wanted to maybe take a step back from farming as we do it, I've had this nervousness about revealing that to Greg after he has had this goal to make farmers. Mm-hmm. And am I failing if I take a step back from that? And the reality is whenever I have that conversations around those types of things with Greg, he's just the most supportive. It wouldn't matter if I said yeah, Greg, I don't have it in me. I'm not a farmer after all you gave me. And he'd just be man, you're just, living life and doing great and no failure. It's awesome. Look at all you've done and look at what you can continue to do into the future. And for me, I just keep moving towards this feeling of for me, that's teaching gardeners and people to do it at home. It's so important that what Greg would say in this conversation is he would be yeah, and people are working all the time and so many people just don't have access to the tools or the knowledge and we have to feed these people. And Greg has always, really had such a push for including bringing everyone to the table and providing the best quality food for the least, people with the least access to it. Lindsay and I met teaching environmental science, and when we got the farm started, that was something that we were still really passionate about, and it had all of that knowledge had been given so really freely to us through all of the farming mentors, which was basically all the farms around. If we had questions for folks, they were really forthcoming and thorough in their answers and the knowledge that they had gained over the years, which is really cool because that's what it takes. It just takes being out there and being observant and learning lots of details and bits and pieces. And so, yeah, from the very start, we weren't really in a position to be teaching anyone. much of anything because we just had so much to learn. When we look back at our going to our first market, it's just kind of like, oh my God, how did we like feel comfortable, like feeling like that was enough stuff to go and present at the farmer's market. Like we were crazy, but that was our starting point. We needed to start there to get, all of those lessons in, and with all these farmers, to be able to bounce stuff off. And so, yeah, it's always felt important to be paying that forward, and, running our farm out at Boardman Hill for so long and just being constantly reminded of Greg's whole thing about growing the pie, not thinking of each other as competition, but as, like working together to grow the whole food economy. Mm-hmm. So we've been constantly reminded of that, and definitely wanted to pay that forward. And so we've always done a bunch of peripheral education stuff, like in the community, whenever there's opportunities to do that. And that's something that I'm really excited about continuing to do. And then more substantially, once we were into our 6th year, I guess, when we moved the majority of the operation up here to Shrewsbury, we started taking on 2 full-time apprentices for the summer season. We basically modeled, the experience we had at Foggy Meadow. Not that we manage our farm exactly how he does or they do, but, the basic arrangement of the thing, being here from middle of April through the end of October and doing basically all that's involved in the farm, working really closely alongside of us. And then Katie came. This will be her 4th year working with us. And so, she came as an apprentice with another apprentice that year, and worked on the farm with us, and then went off to work on some other farms, and then came back with us, and has been sort of just like, we've moved towards, it's basically Katie and I, working on the farm, and Katie more and more just doing like a ton of the field work. And it's been so cool to work closely with someone like that over the course of years. Just figure out all those rhythms and efficiencies to get to a point of feeling like you have something to mentor someone in, like that. We really can be a source of knowledge, and hopefully also passing on those same messages that Greg has been instilling in us, and Bill Clark was instilling in him, and, all positive.
I recently caught up on the front porch with Alchemy Gardens apprentice Katie Stickney. In the first episode of this series, we heard from Greg Cox about how he was inspired by Bill Clark to be a lifelong learner and to build lasting institutions like Rutland's Farmers Market that would continue to support new farming businesses. Greg, in turn, helped Scott establish his farm, inspiring him to not be afraid of the potential failures and to give freely what he had learned. And Katie's connections to the natural rhythms on the farm have inspired her to be more and more self-sufficient and to appreciate the beauty of life.
The other day I was planting tomatoes in the greenhouse, and I find tomatoes pretty magical to begin with. I really enjoy like the trellising process and just how tall they get, and there's something just sort of magnificent about them. And so I think just being down like on your hands and knees and putting this little baby in the soil and knowing what it'll eventually or hopefully end up being. And then I don't know, it sounds so funny, but I was like singing to them and talking to them, and it was out of tune and it was just like silliness, but I don't know, in my head I was like, I'm sure they're gonna appreciate this long term, I don't know.
Awesome.
That's like, I don't know. I think sometimes the day-to-day tasks, like I'm just thinking, like I would love to describe a harvesting scenario for folks, but on those days, like you're just so tuned in on like, this is what needs to get done. And so it's all about efficiency and, speed and all these things. So I feel like that wouldn't be a good example, but I feel like planting, I often slow down and take my time and really recognize like there's incredible power in seeding and planting and thinning. And I mean, you're potentially giving life to these little beings. I only knew what I didn't want to do. I was living in Brooklyn at the time and trying on a bunch of different hats, none of which fit. And so for whatever reason, I decided to Google farm jobs in upstate New York. And I started volunteering at a farm in the Hudson Valley a couple days a week. And then that just sort of lent itself to other farming opportunities down the line. I think I Googled like small farms in, I think I might have just said Vermont. I don't think I was, I don't think I had a distinct place in mind, and theirs came up. And then the farm that I was working for at the time, she was like, "Oh, I know them. They're good. You should work with them." I would consider it more of like a work exchange. So you receive a stipend, housing, all the produce you could imagine, and then there's a large educational component.
Is that what you're getting from Alco? Like, is that what Scott is providing with Alco?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Him and Lindsay both are incredible educators. They are incredibly intentional in the way that they grow. I really feel like they're good parents to the plants, and they value the life of the plant so much, and I find that so incredibly refreshing. And I think too, they want to have a great quality of life. And I think sometimes, farming is crazy. Farming can be really busy and insane, and that's wonderful, but it also is not sustainable long term, I think. And I think Scott and Lindsay have a good balance of work and play. I would love a homestead, and I think just being able to help farms that are already established, just providing them with good employment is sort of my niche.
Somebody that was in, somebody right now that would be in your shoes that you were in while you were in Brooklyn, and you knew what you didn't want to do, and you were looking for something else. What might you say to that person about maybe that, what would you say to them that might make them think, oh, maybe I do want to check out farming?
I think honestly that it's okay to not know. And I don't mean just like not knowing what you want to do, but I think being put in an environment where everything seems so alien, that's how it felt for me at the time. Frankly, I looked very foolish in comparison to other workers on the farm, but I just was in such admiration of them. And it wasn't even at the time like their relationship to food that inspired me. It was just this aura, this like vitality that they had that I found so appealing, and I just knew I wanted more. So I guess, yeah, to anyone that was considering farming, I would say that it's okay to not know. And in fact, I think that's almost better, because you don't come in with any preconceived notions, and it's just, it's an environment that is conducive to learning, which I think any time that we can stay curious it keeps us youthful, it keeps us going. I think it provides a great quality of life. I mean, it is to me a living wage, all the produce you could imagine, a great learning environment, and just a community of folks that at least I've had the good fortune of being able to show up at the farm and just love working with. I mean, I don't think it gets much better, for work.
Yeah, I guess it just makes me think of this whole thing that it's just kind of this good thing that's passing through the generations, That's what it takes. It takes people continually passing down this type of knowledge and these sorts of, and the opportunities to keep this ag scene going really positively where we live. And I'm excited that we have been able to be a part of that, and that, someone like Katie has come and found work with us and with other farms around, and that provides a life that, for her works really well. That's all great to hear.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I guess, and I would thank you for the work that you guys have done in the community around that. You have helped create a wonderful agricultural community here. Great work.
Yeah, great work to all the folks that have been a part of it.
Any final thoughts on this and growing the idea of growing the next crop of farmers?
Yeah, I really like this idea of demonstration gardens still, and I really want all of the young folks growing up around here in Rutland County, and I mean everywhere, but I would like folks to have the opportunity to be inspired about what gardening is. And I think the more we all can sort of have a positive experience around what that all means, and just an exposure to it. I never saw an organic vegetable farm, I don't think, at all growing up, or had much concept of what that was about, or that there were folks right in our community that were doing some of that, making a living that way. And we've had kids that have come out for programs here that, from school in Rutland, that have said similar things, like just that they're surprised. It's such a different way of making a living than like a lot of what they're used to or what they see. I want to get all these young folks out seeing an inspiring garden and having an experience with that. And I think that could do so much good for our whole food scene and, getting some people out there and doing this.
Scott Courcelle is passionate about inspiring people to grow even just a little bit of their food at home. But what if you are inspired to grow, but you're not seeing your identities represented in the farming community around you? According to a 2017 federal survey, only 13 Black people owned farmland in Vermont, compared to 6,382 white people. Despite that enormous imbalance in land access in Vermont, BIPOC farmers are creating some really innovative models for growing new farmers. The Rutland Bennington chapter of the NAACP is collecting resources for new and aspiring BIPOC farmers, as well as making partnerships with different farm agencies and land trusts. In Brattleboro, Vermont, the Susu Community Farm is an Afro-Indigenous stewarded farm and land-based healing center that elevates Vermont land and foodways and aspires to co-create an equitable and just culture for the global majority to thrive in Vermont, that centers access to safe and affirming food, community, and job opportunities through programs like their Box of Resilience CSA program and workshops like Seeds of Our Ancestors, an herbal education program for people of color who are actively seeking to reconnect with nature and reclaim wisdom of their ancestors as a way of supporting healing for themselves and their communities. And throughout Vermont, a land access program called Everytown is working to ensure that at least one quality parcel of land in every community in the state will be held forever for stewardship by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. The project proposes to collaborate with the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust to ensure new and aspiring BIPOC farmers will have access to land in Vermont. The Abenaki Landlink project, championed by Don Stevens, chief of the Nulhegan Band of the Courcelle, grows food for Abenaki citizens by partnering with growers from around Vermont that plant traditional Abenaki crops with seeds provided by the Nulhegan Band of the Courcelle. Many of these seeds were originally sourced by Dr. Fred Wiseman and the Seeds of Renewal project. We'll be hearing from many of the folks behind these projects, including the Seeds of Renewal project, on future episodes of Root Words. This episode of Root Words was produced by Stephen Abatiell and Scott Courcelle, with special thanks to Katie Stickney. If you are a new or aspiring farmer in Vermont, there's a lot of organizations and agencies that are here to help. Find information from Vermont New Farmer Network, Intervale Center, NOFA, the Northeast Farmers of Color Land Trust, the Susu Community Farm, the Abenaki Landlink Project, the USDA, University of Vermont Center for Sustainable Agriculture, and the University of Vermont Extension Online, just to name a few. Our musical themes are by the Saltash Serenaders. We are a project of the Vermont Farmers Food Center and SAGE. Thank you all for listening and for being a part of our local food system. This podcast has been made possible by generous support from the National Endowment for the Humanities. We'll catch you next time on Root Words.